Hi, and welcome to InterVarsity Graduate Student Faculty Ministries first Body, Soul, and Spirit Forum for the fall 2025. I'm so delighted to have this opportunity along with professors and eventually students that will come in and help you prepare to live a better life and to live a more fulfilling life by taking care of your body, by taking care of your soul, and by taking care of your spirit. So you're in for a treat as we cover all three of these particular aspects of taking care of yourself. I'm joined today, as we first open up with the body, with Dr. Ashley Elliott. Would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone, thanks so much for the invitation, Angela. Glad to be here. I'm an assistant professor here at University of Houston in the Master of Athletic Training program within the Health and Human Performance Department. So it's my honor to be here today to share a little bit about how stress can impact students, and I'm really excited to be here and supporting.
Thank you so much. She started this with me last fall, and I'm glad to be bringing it back this fall. And as she mentioned, today we're going to focus on stress and transition. So we know many of you are here starting your fall semesters, faculty as well. Many of you are starting this new semester. Some of you may be new to the city, some of you may be new to the whole country. And so what is going on with the transitions that are happening? How stressful has that been for you? So today we're going to talk about stress and transition with the body with Dr. Elliott. Then I'll have another guest panelist talk about what stress and anxiety does to you and on your mental level and on your emotional level. And then we're going to close out with what stress does to you or how to handle stress on a spiritual level. So Dr. Ashley Elliott gave me some questions that we wanted to kind of cover and just kind of talk about, what are some things that you all can do to help yourself get through this first month of school. So first of all, just talking about stress, when you think about physically being stressed, how would you define that? What's a practical definition for stress?
Sure. So as college students, many of you have experienced stressors or will experience stressors. I'm sure being almost a month into classes, we're experiencing some stress related to first exams coming up, moving, all the things Minister Angela mentioned. And our body has a unique way of managing stress. So the way our body processes stress is actually supposed to be helpful, but it's not supposed to be chronic or long-term, which is unfortunately what we live in many of the times in our today's culture of just chronic schedules, busyness, and so on. So when we have a stressor, our body responds by naturally increasing hormones. It increases our adrenaline, and it also increases our cortisol. Adrenaline helps us prepare for a fight. Okay, so we don't have this as much anymore, but think way back when maybe you're confronted with a bear right in front of you, right? Our body responds by increasing our adrenaline. It gets our heart rate up, it moves our blood flow to our muscles to help us to run, essentially run away from the stressor. But when we have our stress hormones activated for chronic or more subtle stressors over time, we're taxing that system, and it's just naturally going to keep sometimes that elevated heart rate, blood flow to the muscles, and then it's just going to start shutting down. So we're essentially going to start having some symptoms that just make us feel like we have some chronic neck tension, our muscles are tight, irritated, we might feel like we get some headaches, we feel very tired. So you're just going to see a lot of those things when we ask that helpful stressor system move into chronic everyday stressors. We're just going to see a natural breakdown in a lot of things we see in our body, whether emotion, feeling like we can't sleep, all kinds of things. And it's all due to these pesky hormones that are helpful, but when they're asked to be on too long, they can be essentially too much of a good thing.
Okay. That's so interesting to know. So when you talk about being stressed out and you're making the difference between it happening like for an event or an exam versus every week you're at this high level of your hormones, being off balance or whatever. So like short term, let's talk short term first. Physically, how does that affect a person's performance? You getting stressed out just for the exam. Like how does that affect that individual?
Sure. So when we have that activation of our fight or flight system or how our body deals with stress, again, that's really designed to be more so how can we essentially flee or run away from the response. But many of the times the things we're exposed to in a modern day world that's stressing us is maybe that exam. So while your body is naturally using hormones to increase your heart rate, increase blood flow to your muscles, what we really need is blood flow to the brain to help us think, process moods and emotion. But when we have that stress, that's not happening as well. So what you'll see initially is We're seeing decreased cognition. It's harder for us to think or process what's right in front of us. We feel maybe a little sweaty, we feel a little clammy, we're kind of just worked up about this stressful type of environment, and taking away from the things that we need to, having a more calm demeanor, being able to read that exam question and know exactly what it's asking of us. And it just takes some time to regulate to that new type of stressor. So acutely, that's what most students feel when they're first getting into some of these new college exams, college classes, having so many deadlines. And when you just have that constant flow of your body asking for these stress responses, and naturally it's going to take some time to regulate and figure out how do we manage these new stressors that are introduced.
Wow. So when you talk about these effects that are happening, you mentioned even aches, stomach issues, definitely fatigue, or you feeling as though you're tired. Like what's happening, is this more of a long-term effect that we see, or is this short-term?
It really depends.
Okay.
So again, you do have that short-term stress response, but naturally that stressor is thought to go away. So then the body is able to naturally replenish these natural hormones and get back into a state of homeostasis, which just means we're at rest, right? But oftentimes, many times in the day, we're dealing with stressors of, yes, there's an exam coming up, but also I'm further away from my family. Maybe I'm not seeing my friends as much. Maybe I'm worried about finances. Maybe I'm very concerned about everything that's going on in the world right now, and I'm just seeing all of these messages that just make me feel stressed about what's happening. We're going to see that chronic, even though it may not feel like, oh my gosh, there's a bear in front of me or I'm about to get in a car accident, you still have a low grade amount of hormones that are being produced from signals from your brain and your adrenal cortex, your pituitary gland, your kidneys, or having your adrenal system produce these hormones, and we just have low grade production of these hormones that were once designed to just be a quick stressor. Now we're asking them to run all the time, and they're naturally going to fizzle out and start causing some harmful effects throughout the body for a more long term. So it really is short and long term.
Okay. So what physical signs of stress would you say faculty experience?
So I would say faculty probably experience the same levels or experience of stress as students do, but oftentimes they've probably been experiencing stressors since the time they were college students. And so we're seeing more chronic effects of this. So we had the stressors as college students, now we're going to busy faculty life and careers, and so that low, long grade chronic stress is happening. So over time, when we have these chronic buildup of stressors and we're never finding a way to address them, when we have over time increased adrenaline running, that does stiffen our arteries, so we could see some correlations between maybe we're starting to see some high blood pressure keep up as we're starting to age a little bit, or maybe we're starting to see we're having long-term musculoskeletal issues from being so stressed. We're not realizing, but at night maybe we're clenching our jaw, so we're starting to get a lot of stress on the TMJ muscles in our jaw. Also, naturally, when we respond to stress, we usually hold it in our shoulders. So feeling a lot of head and neck pain, that's contributing to headaches. So you'll see those same type of symptoms that you see in college students, but they're starting to become more chronic, long-lasting, and creeping into other systemic systems like that high blood pressure. Sometimes we'll see also decreased insulin response because cortisol does play a role in how it transports energy to our body to function, but over time it's not going to work as well, so we can see increased insulin resistance, which can relate to being predisposed for diabetes. We're also seeing when we have too long of cortisol built up, it's easy for us to start gaining weight in a lot of areas like our abdomen or areas that are areas we don't like to see, right? So we see all those chronic stressors starting to add up, particularly as we age.
Wow. So you start off 17, 18, 19, 20, and you never learn how to handle your stress. You never develop good techniques in managing stress. And so I guess by the time you're 30, 35, you can start experiencing the symptoms, diabetes and high blood pressure, all of that. Okay.
And it doesn't mean it's always a direct correlation, but we often do see that stress definitely does not help those things.
Absolutely.
And it's always something we're going to have to work on. We're never going to fully have a best way to handle stress, but just as we go through different life phases, what can we change or adapt to be able to minimize the stress as much as possible will help us be more protected against some of those long-term chronic conditions than if we're not addressing it at all.
Absolutely. That's so interesting. And then also, you're talking about your health, paying attention to yourself, paying attention to what new aches or what new pains you may have is extremely important. Are there any symptoms that people should be aware of that constitute an emergency?
Sure. Yeah, so when we think about stress, oftentimes our stressors are things, while discomforting, things we can manage on our own. Maybe some exercise, working on diaphragmatic breathing, spending time, things you're doing and enjoying as much as you have a busy schedule, absolutely throwing in some time to read a book or call a loved one. Those are things we can do to manage low-grade stress symptoms. But of course, just like anything else, there are symptoms of stress. That just means we cannot handle this on our own. Our body has utilized the maximum ability to cope with the stressor, and it's not working. Again, oftentimes, if you just have any uncertainty if this is an emergency symptom or not, I would always encourage you, it's better to get it checked out versus not. Here at University of Houston, you have great resources for medical teams. So if you ever have a medical concern, you can absolutely reach out to the medical center, or if it is a true emergency, calling 911 or activating campus police to help you get the help you need. But in terms of what would be symptoms that may be mental health related or stress related but are emergency, think about shortness of breath. I feel like my chest is tightening up. That truly could be something like a panic attack, but those are also symptoms very similar to a heart attack. And that would not be able to be ruled out completely without going to the emergency room and getting some testing on your heart to figure out what it is. And then that's a sign too, like, yes, maybe even we get screened, okay, it wasn't a heart attack, it was a panic attack. Still, those are still symptoms that were strong enough for you to seek or need medical attention. And so hopefully that's a cue that we need to figure out some way to manage those stressors so we don't reach that point again. Other symptoms would be, just again, think of extreme responses to stress. In some stressful situations, some individuals are predisposed to having what we call psychosis symptoms. It's not going to happen in everyone, not something to worry about, but if you truly feel like you're hearing things or seeing things that are not there, that is also an example of something I'd recommend getting some emergency help. So there's some things that physicians and mental health professionals can help manage those symptoms and help exacerbate any like long-term issues. So just things that just are really impeding your ability to take care of yourself, function, that aren't adding up, those are all things that we would want to manage and get some emergency help for.
Wow, thank you, Doctor. You mentioned the tightness in the chest, shortness of breath. Sometimes it may not be like a fatal kind of thing, but you don't know.
Exactly.
So you don't want to play around with it.
Exactly.
At any age, right?
Absolutely.
Younger or older, if you're experiencing those kind of symptoms, you want to get checked out.
Yeah, absolutely.
What strategies can you offer today to help people combat or counteract these effects of stress?
There's so many out there, and I really think it's an individualized approach. There's not a one-size-fits-all mechanism. So I think it depends. Of course, we have great literature that if you can exercise, even just getting out for a short walk or doing some type of exercise you enjoy. If you know you hate running, then find something you do enjoy. Maybe it's yoga, maybe it's taking advantage of the campus rec center and going rock climbing or taking advantage of all the opportunities that they offer to you here at the university. Swimming laps, that absolutely has long-term benefits in stress response. But if you're one that feels like exercise is not for you, or maybe you're not even physically capable of exercise, there's other things that are out there that can help you. We also have a lot of great literature on any type of breathing technique. So diaphragmatic breathing, where we think about trying to inhale through our belly versus through our lungs. Of course, our lungs are meant to help us, but they weren't supposed to take up all the role. So we should be using our abdominal muscles to help us breathe. Some techniques you can utilize for this would be trying to breathe in for 4 seconds, holding your breath for about 7 seconds, and then releasing out slowly for 8. Then doing these about counts of 3 to 4 times. There's all kinds of different breathing mechanisms out there, but just thinking about being more intentional with your breath. If you're one who enjoys reading books or taking advantage of watching a favorite TV show, spending time with friends, whatever is something that helps you feel more at your natural self, that's what I would direct you to. That really help break that up. And of course, we're never going to be able to take away the stressors of a busy work day or busy classes, but I guarantee you there's probably something you can do to fit in 30 minutes of something that you enjoy that can help minimize the stress load. So I really encourage you to try to make that a daily goal.
So definitely making sure you bring yourself down is a must.
Absolutely.
And you want to make sure that you start a lifestyle of that, right? I heard you say swimming. Are there certain exercises that are even more, okay?
No, it's
Oh,
really
okay.
more so about what is most beneficial for you. Any type of exercise that's going to increase your heart rate is going to be helpful for minimizing that stress response or helping the body adapt to manage stressors long term more efficiently. It's more so about what's enjoyable for you. If someone says they hate running, then that's not what we're going to do.
We don't want
need
to
something
stretch you out and
enjoyable.
make
So
you run.
if it's swimming, then let's do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, before the exam, or what's something that faculty gets stressed out? Grading exam, or
I would say more so generally just there's usually just not enough time in the day is the
Absolutely.
response I hear from faculty. I mean,
Okay.
they're trying to do the best they can for their students while also balancing committee work and research and family lives or whatever they have to manage on their own day to day. So for them, I think it's trying to fit all of the tasks into the day.
Okay.
And so I think that spending that time of, okay, it can be really easy to say, I don't have time to work out today. I need to focus on these tasks. But if there's something we can do, can we maybe think about potentially seeing if there's room in the budget for adding a treadmill disc at work. So maybe while you're reading your emails, you can have a light walking activity while doing some emails, just to help you get a little bit of natural activity in your work day. Or taking a 10-minute break to just do a lap around the building. Even those small 5 to 10 minutes can absolutely make a difference when added up throughout the day and week. I think a lot of people get turned off of like, oh, if I don't have an hour to do it, it's not making any difference. But we truly do see even having about 7,000 steps a week can be something that's really beneficial for increased health and everything. So it doesn't always have to be an hour every day. Just at least making some progress can be really helpful.
And I've heard intermittent exercising is also helpful. So like you said, just throughout the day,
Absolutely.
even if you take 5 minutes to decompress.
Doing some squats at your desk or something like that.
Absolutely. Okay, so now students who may be getting ready for an exam, they're stressing out. What is something quick or simple? I heard you talk about some breathing techniques. Are there any other things you could recommend?
Breath work would be what I would highly recommend. That's easy to do no matter where you're at. If you're in your dorm room about to take an exam or having to walk over to the CASA Exam Center, we can take 5 minutes before and just do some nice breathing work. If you are a student that does struggle with maybe attention or focus during exams, or maybe you even have something like ADHD, there is research that shows that like a quick burst of exercise can be really helpful for attention and focus. So it might seem silly, but just getting up and doing about 10 squats or 10 sit-ups or doing a little circuit right before you go to that exam can really prove and help that focus before going to an exam. So that would be another recommendation.
Okay, that's helpful. That's helpful. And I hope that anyone who's stressing out or when you're getting ready to take the test, that you remember some of these techniques. We're going to have some things also in writing on the website for you, so you can also just kind of get these things in your mind so that physically you can make sure you take care of your body long term. How are we looking on time?
We're at 12:18.
12:18, okay. Our fitness coach could not be here. He had to rearrange his schedule due to work. But normally he would share a lot of things about health. I don't know if you want to share anything. I think he probably would kind of talk about what does stress do to our muscles or what does stress do,
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective, kind of going back to those hormones I talked about earlier, those hormones are going to direct blood flow to your muscles, which is good, but then long term, that can cause, if you have too much stress added to that area, we're going to see kind of muscle cramping, tight, restricted muscles. So from a fitness perspective, what can we do to relax those muscles? Some individuals find it beneficial if they do struggle from stress-induced headaches or stress-related muscle aches. Having an electric heating pad that you can plug in for 30 minutes and just laying on that will help increase some blood flow to muscles, relax the muscles. The best thing we can do for our muscles is actually utilize them. Getting in the gym, lifting some weights, doing some cardiovascular activity. But maybe if we're not physically able to do that because we are so stressed, starting with something that will add some intermittent blood flow, such as a heating pad, or just even like doing some shoulder circles at your desk. Anything you can do to get those muscles moving will help utilize the blood flow being directed to the muscles during the stress response to really help use that energy and then also pump out any stress or restrictions that are being held in the muscle. So really anything you can do that would be helpful for you in terms of what you find enjoyable for exercise. Yes, there's going to be certain goals you can have if your goal is to build muscle mass, then yes, there's exercises we could target for that. But if it's truly stress relief, any type of cardiovascular weight-lift activity is going to be helpful for that.
Okay. That's good to know. And that's making me also think about massages. Are massages equally or better, or?
I don't know if we have enough research to say that it's equally or better. I think it again is that kind of individualized. There's no one size fits all approach for individuals.
Okay.
It's really about what's helpful for them.
Okay.
Massage absolutely has been found to help reduce stress because we're reducing that muscle tension. But it also is an economic factor, right? Many college students may not feel like they have the budget to be able to facilitate having a massage. But taking advantage of like foam rollers or a tennis ball and rubbing that against your muscles, there's a lot of ways you can do self-massage, which absolutely, anything we can do to break up the spasm pain cycle of muscle tension can be helpful, and massage absolutely could be a tool.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Any last minute thoughts you have on helping students or faculty?
Yeah, I think one takeaway I would give to students that I haven't talked about yet, I know that you're like, where do I have the time for this? But if I can encourage one self-management technique is please sleep. You're here to learn, and I guarantee you we have so much research that shows that we are not learning and retaining information if we do not allow our bodies to sleep. That's when our brain processes information, stores memories. So we really do show in the literature that anywhere from 7 to 9 hours, it really depends on the individual, but please at least give yourself 7 hours of quality sleep. I guarantee you it will improve your grades, it will help you feel better in the day, and we just have so much literature about sleep. I think the one other thing I would add about sleep is knowing a little bit about sleep hygiene. Now that doesn't mean, I need to take a shower before I sleep. What that means is what factors help me sleep better. So some things we know that help us sleep better is avoiding screens at least an hour before bed. So I know it's really easy to scroll through social media at the end of the day, but if you can maybe read a book or do something in either low light, not getting that blue light in your face, that will help us sleep. Also thinking about trying as much as possible to wake up and go to bed at the same time every day. I know it's very natural for us to want to on the weekends we don't have class, let's sleep in. But our circadian rhythm, which again goes into our hormones of how our body naturally rises and sleeps, gets really thrown off if we change what time we're waking up every day. So as much as possible, trying to stay in about the same hour or two of a wake-up window can really help your body get into a natural rhythm. The more we have expected routines, the body is going to be more in homeostasis or have that natural rise and flow of hormones rather than being all out of whack and causing a lot of distress on our system. So if at all possible, trying to help your body have a good environment to sleep is really helpful as well.
That is super important. I didn't even think about sleep, and I know personally, that's the one thing I do is get my rest.
Yeah.
But how many hours would you say are recommended in order for your body?
It varies per individual, but most of our literature still states anywhere between 7 to 9 hours. There's a lot of apps out there that can help you figure out like what works best for you. I would say start with at least 7. If you don't feel good after 7, let's try 7.5. And if that's not working, 8, right? Some individuals just know they're going to work better off of 9 or 7, but we do know that we need at least 7 quality hours at this age once you're an adult onward to really be able to stave off illness, have lower stress impacts, and just really help you throughout your day-to-day activities. And it really will help your studies, I promise.
And let me ask you this as well. So pillows, mattresses, does anything, does that play a factor in how well you rest?
It certainly can.
Okay.
I think, again, it's very individualized. Some individuals do sleep better on a softer mattress. Some feel better on a firmer mattress. So I wouldn't say we, to my knowledge, have research that there's a specific way.
Okay.
But I do think figuring out what works best for you. So if you're on a firm mattress and you see that you're waking up several times a night, maybe let's try to get like a $15 foam mattress topper to put on top of that and see if that helps you a little bit. In terms of like what pillows or things like that, it's more so for like musculoskeletal conditions. If you have certain conditions, sometimes a different type of pillow may be helpful.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say more so the time and quality of the sleep is probably more important factor to focus on.
And you mentioned waking up throughout the night. So if you're really in a good place physically, should you sleep straight through the night for the most
You
time?
should. Now,
Okay.
sometimes, depending on how much we hydrated that day,
Right.
that kind of thing can wake us up. I will say that is something that is known in the health community. If you're constantly waking up at night with, like, in constant, you wake up in a sweat or you wake up with pain at night. Those are all factors that can point towards things that are not meant to be happening in the body. So I would highly recommend, if you're waking up and you feel like there's no good reason for you waking up, like I didn't drink a lot of water, I shouldn't be waking up, or I'm waking up feeling awful in a deep sweat, those can all be signs to something malignant. Think about maybe early signs of a cancer or something like that. Not to scare anyone, but those are signs that I would absolutely want to get checked out earlier than not, since we just know that cancer really can be popping up in all kinds of people of any ages. So if you're ever not sleeping well for a long time, see if you can maybe get in with a general practitioner just to check your vitamins, other things, see what's going on, making sure we're not missing anything from a medical standpoint that would be impeding your sleep.
Okay. All right. Well, if that's it, what would you have? Thank you so very
Of
much.
course, thank you all. I really appreciate your time.
Hi, and welcome to our second portion of our Body, Soul, and Spirit Forum. I'm delighted to have with me Brittany Clarkson. Yes, I didn't have it down. Brittany Clarkson from the Wellness Center with us, U of H's own. And she is going to be talking with you about the soul. We're going to be looking more specifically mentally, emotionally. What does taking care of yourself through stressful times, through the different transitions you may be having, how does that affect you mentally? How does that affect you emotionally? And what are some things we can do about that? What are some things that are even offered here on the campus to help you make it through your first semester? So, Brittany, let's first define stress. Share what transitions do to students and faculty, especially at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, so I really love this question because I think stress can be defined in a very individualistic kind of way.
Okay.
But when you kind of take a step back and look at generally, what do we typically mean when we say stress, or we're stressed out, or we're suffering from stress, right?
Yes.
Stress is a natural phenomenon that happens internally inside the body as a response to some internal or external stimuli.
Okay.
So an internal stimuli can be something like pressure to meet expectations, an illness.
Yes.
And an external stimuli can be something as simple as a disagreement with your roommate, financial challenges, or even, traffic. We have a lot of that.
Oh my
in
gosh,
Houston.
that's so stressful.
We have a lot of that in
Very
Houston.
stressful.
And so sometimes stress can be used in a very flippant way of saying, oh my goodness, you're stressing me out, or that has stressed me out. But it's actually a real physiological phenomenon that is a response to the world around us and the world within us.
Okay, that makes sense. That does make sense. And so when you talk about mentally, the driving, I mean, all of us have to experience that in Houston. What is stress doing to us mentally?
So mentally, stress can cause us to feel lots of different feelings. And really it depends on the person.
Okay.
It depends on the external or internal stimuli, and it depends on what we typically do in response to our stress. But mentally, it can cause worry, it can cause anxiety, stress can cause racing thoughts, or it can even cause halting stops, right? I've talked to students who, mentioned that they have periods of extreme stress where they just cannot function.
Okay.
Things just stop.
Right.
To stop moving, to stop thinking, they stop processing. They're essentially disassociating from the stimuli and from feeling the feelings, right? And so we know that those are uncomfortable, those are unpleasant, and we typically try to avoid having those kind of emotional reactions. And I like to caution students that instead of kind of running away from those emotional responses to stress, you really ought to look at running towards them. So taking a deep dive, taking a step back to say, why am I feeling this way? What's causing me to be anxious? What's causing me to worry? What's causing me to maybe have a little bit of irritability? And getting at the root cause. What is that external stimuli that is causing this emotional response? And it's very common, right? There are statistics that talk about stress in college students, stress in professionals, young professionals, seasoned professionals. But one that is particularly concerning, especially at a time right now when we're about 4 weeks into the semester, is that about 60% of students find the beginning of the semester, so transitioning into college, back to campus, into classes, into the routine, overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for more than half of a college campus to be typically overwhelmed by the institution that is, higher education, that can be a lot.
Yes.
But it also reminds us that no one person is feeling this feeling alone.
That's very true. That's very true. And so as you're describing, our actions, I like how you say, first of all, kind of analyze what is it that's producing this trigger? What is it that has stressed me out? Mentally, emotionally, those things actually kind of come together, it sounds like. I mean, you're mentally being affected, and that's also affecting your emotions. Is that pretty much how it works? It's pretty much hand in hand, or would you?
Right, yeah, so
Okay.
the mental ramifications of stress definitely manifest in emotional or physical ways,
Yes,
right?
sure.
And so we see kind of that internal stress response, that worry, that anxiety come out in our moods, come out in the way that we treat people in our social interactions. It can also manifest in some of the physical aspects of our lives, our eating, our sleeping, our physical activity. In UH Wellness, where I work and I'm the current director, we have like a saying that you have to be well to do well, right? So this is this thought that as a person, as a student, as a professional, your health and well-being is more than just what you eat and how much you exercise, right? We say it's more than lifting and lettuce, right?
Okay.
It's a holistic view of your overall health, your emotional health, your financial well-being, your occupational well-being, right? And when even one part of your well-being, your holistic well-being is off, it has a cascading effect.
Okay.
So I take the example of something that's very familiar to a lot of people, and that's finances, right? I know that on the 10th was the reporting day for the university, which is important because that's also the day that you have to have your tuition bills paid.
Oh, wow.
Or planned for on a payment plan or something like that. But that's a very important day because financially, the bursar's office is coming knocking, saying, "Hey, we need, we
They're
need
coming
those."
to bring you some stress.
Exactly. So it's stressful for a lot of students who are already 3 weeks into classes,
Wow.
and if they haven't had those financial aid or scholarships or payments, set up, that can be very stressful, right? So your financial well-being is tied to your tuition payments that are, may not be paid. That's an external stressor that can then have a cascading effect into how you show up socially. So maybe you're typically a outgoing person, you like to recharge your battery with friends, you like to have conversations and, go out and explore the city. But if you're experiencing financial stress, maybe you're a little bit more reclusive.
Absolutely.
Maybe you don't have the funds to go out and go to the movies or go to see that concert or go to Post and go shopping. So now you're a little bit more isolated because you're not able to do the activities that typically revolve around money. So now we have a financial depletion in our well-being and a social depletion in our well-being.
Okay.
Well, when we're not surrounded by the people that we love, doing the things that we love, emotionally we also start to suffer, right? We feel lonely, we feel isolated, we're not talking to other people, we're not venting about our stress, we're not being seen, we're not being heard, and that takes an emotional toll, right? And so where we started with the tuition bill, we have had social impact and emotional impact, and that can also lead to physical impact, right?
Wow.
Headaches, not eating, or eating too much, not sleeping, or sleeping too much, not going outside to simply sit in the sun, which is really great for our emotional health and our dopamine levels, right? And so what started as a simple tuition bill has now cascaded and is affecting multiple points of our holistic well-being. So I say all that to say that, again, avoiding that stress is very detrimental to our health, to think that we can just power through it, and have the grit. Now, some people, can get by on grit and determination alone, but some of us need to do some digging to uncover some root causes in order to adjust those so that the remaining aspects of our well-being don't spiral out of control as well.
That's powerful. Thank you for painting that picture, how one thing can lead to 4 different things. One issue has now grown into something on a whole different level. And so, like you said, identifying what that problem is, that stressor is, and even if you know it, even if you understand what it is, like that's something you can deal with right there. Like, I know I'm sad right now because I don't know how I'm going to pay my tuition. But then saying, okay, I need the energy from other people. I need the emotional stability. I need some support right now. Like, don't let yourself go into the spiral. Don't let it just keep growing and growing. So I appreciate that whole presentation of that, Brittany. I had a question about, is it possible for students or even faculty to be stressed and not even realize it?
I think so.
Okay.
Right. I think, especially when we kind of get caught up in the minutia of life and running here and there. My grandma always said, oh, I just had a lot of ripping and running to do. And I was like, I don't know what ripping and running is.
It's a Texas thing, I
but,
think.
but as I get older, I have a better understanding of what it means to rip and run. But sometimes we just get so caught up in the doing and the being places and the being the person to other people that we ignore our body's alarm system, right? And that's what stress is. Stress is your body's alarm system. And so sometimes we are either not paying close enough attention, or we just are attributing some of these physical or physiological manifestations of stress to something else. Like, okay, well, I'm just really tired because I was studying all night, right? Or I'm just in a bad mood because I got a bad grade, or I just have a headache, maybe I'm not drinking enough water, right? But all of those things can be directly tied back to stress, and to the mishandling of stress.
Wow.
Right? And so I think it's very easy to kind of gloss over the fact that stress is telling us that we need to slow down, that we need to stop, reevaluate, and adjust. When we're so focused on the rip and the running, the continuing to go and be and do, we just kind of tell ourselves that it's because of something else, or it's something that I just need to push through. So I think it's very common for stress to either be mislabeled as something else, and kind of not really addressed until maybe it gets to a point where you have no choice but to.
Exactly. You start seeing those physical manifestations that literally stop you in your tracks, or they slow you down completely. And so, again, we want to avoid getting to that point. You and I talked a little bit in our pre-discussion about managing stress. And so what does that look like? What does that look like for the student, with pre-exams, for the faculty, trying to get their whole workload done for the day?
Right, so I like to say that managing stress kind of has 2 stages, right? And there could be more, but I like to divide it up just to keep it simple to 2 stages. We have the mitigation stage and we have the response stage. So, and I'll explain that. So I come from a place in another lifetime. I was employed in a public health emergency and response phase. So I worked for Harris County Public Health, and the team that I was on helped the county plan for public health disasters. So outbreaks such as Ebola, COVID, hurricane response, tropical storm responses. So I was on a team that we really looked at how can we lessen the impact of any number of public health emergencies on a person's worst day, right? And so we call that mitigation. We want to lessen the impact of something that we know is a possibility, right? So same thing with stress. I have talked to countless students who have commented on the fact that University of Houston does a great job offering events and outreach programs geared towards helping students manage their stress. The downfall is that they offer it when the students are already stressed.
Yes.
So it's the end of the
Okay.
semester, it's midterms, and the university is saying, hey, come get these pancakes. Hey, come play with these Legos. Hey, come and, do this de-stressing thing. But our students don't always have the time to do it because, again, they're already in the throes of studying, of stress, things like that. So what I've heard is that we, as students, need something throughout the year to help us mitigate the stress.
Okay.
Right? And what does mitigation look like? It looks like an emergency management talk. It looks like clearing out tanks and reservoirs, right? Mowing the grass so that the extra water has somewhere to go. Clearing out the drains so the extra water has somewhere to go. What does it look like in a student's life, or a professor's life, or a staff member's life? It looks like scheduling time for yourself.
Okay.
Putting yourself in your calendar, not putting yourself last behind meetings or behind classes. It looks like moving your body. It looks like addressing tension. It looks like having annual checkups, right? It looks like making social connections and gathering up your tribe or your people that make you feel good to help you recharge your batteries, right? And so that's mitigating stress. That's preparing, because we know that life is going to be stressful.
Absolutely.
There's no question about it, right? We know that
You're
the
not
stress
going to
will come.
avoid ever being having some form of stress.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so knowing that eventually we're going to have times where we're stressed out, what can we do to make that not as impactful?
Okay.
Right? How do we clear the tanks and clear the reservoirs, right? And then the second part to it, so that's our mitigation part. The second part to it is our response. Okay, so the outbreak is here, the hurricane is upon us, the flooding has started happening. What do we do in these moments to ensure that we are not, for all intents and purposes, overcome or consumed by our stress, by our emergency, right? And this is where the stress management part comes in.
Okay.
And I think a lot of times in our culture we have this buzzword of self-care. Now, I am a strong proponent for self-care. I believe that self-care is necessary, and I believe that, again, putting yourself first, putting yourself on your own calendar is a form of self-care. Going to the doctor for your annual physical is self-care. Getting some sunshine and some green in your life is self-care.
Absolutely.
Right? But I think we've kind of taken this, and it's taken more of a pop culture turn to mean that, oh, I need this bag, or I need that massage, or I need to get my toes done,
Yes.
or I need to buy this motorcycle, you know what I mean, or take this vacation.
Yes.
Nothing is inherently wrong with those things,
Right.
but when we're looking at what is the long-term impact that these superficial activities have on my stress,
Yes.
they don't always line up to what we're needing them to do.
Okay.
Right?
That's very valid.
So when we're looking at stress management, we're in the throes of the stress. It's midterms, it's finals, we're going home for the holidays, we're in the throes of stress.
Right.
What do we do that we're not consumed by it? And some of this is going back to those mitigating steps. Some of it is remembering to go outside and take a walk, to talk to the people that you love, to vent appropriately, because we don't, we don't want to overwhelm or overburden, folks unnecessarily, or that may not be able to handle the amount of weight that we're carrying. So maybe that looks like talking to somebody from CAPS, a licensed psychologist, or therapist. Maybe this means putting our studies away and going to volunteer, going to help a friend, just doing something in the moment to give you a little bit more bandwidth, to make your rubber band a little bit more stretchy so that you can get back in it and get through it.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I like how you categorized it. And so there are preventative things we can do. There's ways to be thinking about our life. We already know we're taking so many hours or we're going to be doing so many things, but intentionally scheduling something for yourself. That's very hard to do, I'll tell you. I take care of myself last all the time, but as I have these types of talks, I get convicted. And so, we should take care of ourselves. It's appropriate to do that. Dr. Elliott, right before you, we were talking about too, you're going to perform better. You're going to do better if you do these kind of things. Go Go ahead.
Absolutely. I was going to say I had a statistic from the American College Health Association. They have data from college students all across the nation, and they say that students who are under high amounts of stress are twice as likely to report poor academic performance. And so if that stress is it's testing, it's studying, it's meeting that 11:59 p.m. deadline, you think you're doing what you need to do to pass that test, when really it's more of a detriment.
Yeah.
So there's physical, mental, academic benefits to being able to manage that stress. And like you said, I have that issue as well, right? I work full time. I have 3 very energetic boys. I'm a student, right? And so we all wear so many different hats, right? We have students who are providers for their families. They are first generation. They're figuring this thing out on their own. They're far away from home. They're working full time, classes full time. We all wear so many hats, and so it's easy for us to put those hats before the head. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so it's easy to do that, but it's important to schedule you first, because the one person that you wake up and go to bed with is yourself.
Yeah.
The one person that you face in the mirror every day is yourself. And there was a comedian who talked about like maintaining your star player. Like you are your roster player.
Yes.
You have to maintain your star player. You can't be traded to any other team.
Yeah.
Nobody else is going to draft you but you.
Right.
So you have to invest in your star player.
I like that. So you take a student who, what would you recommend? You're not quite ready for the test, but do you stay up overnight and study? Do you stay up and make sure you get some rest? Like, what kind of call would you make? Because is the person going to do better because they have gotten a little rest, or if they stay up all night? Or it could depend on the individual, maybe.
I think there's a lot of different factors,
Okay.
but I won't always, and this is the hill that I will stand on for 1,000 years, is to say that if you can trade an extra hour for sleep and limit yourself in your hours of study, sleep is important. Because what happens is when you're sleeping, we all know that you have sleep cycles, right? You have your sleep cycles, you have your REM sleep. Well, in your sleep is where your brain connects the things that you have studied with the things that you remember. So you have a lot of connectivity that happens, especially in your REM cycle sleep, that is imperative to retention of knowledge and memory. And so if you stay up all night, your brain hasn't had a chance to enter REM sleep and to make those connections. And so you're less likely to actually have that knowledge ingrained into your learning space, because your brain hasn't had a chance to sleep and to do that work while you're unconscious. So I will always advocate for closing the book and getting some sleep. And if you're already in it, let's say it's 3 hours till test time, you're like, well, what's 3 hours? If you can get those two, it's better than nothing.
Okay, all right. You've heard it from 2 professionals. That is what Dr. Elliott shared, and Brittany is sharing it as well. How are we looking on time, Brittany?
Got about 2 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay, all right. What are some practical recommendations? Well, I think you kind of talked about that, recommendations you need to share when it comes to stress. You mentioned, like, at the A.D. Bruce Religion Center, we do have things like Lego Your Stress. For those of you who like to do things with your hands, that's a form of releasing stress for you. Now, you mentioned on the maintenance side, we have these events, we have different things students can do. But are you recommending that at the beginning of the year, we introduce these things to them before they even start their classes and have them put that in their routine every Tuesday or Tuesday and Thursday? After I take these heavy classes, I'm going to go and decompress with the Lego Your Stress event, or is that kind of what you're referring to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And that's one of my first pieces of practical advice, is to build a routine.
Okay,
Right?
good.
As humans, psychologically, we thrive on routines.
Yes.
Right? Take children, right? Take our babies. Like I mentioned, I have 3 boys.
Wow.
My youngest is 10 months old.
Oh, my God.
And we work so hard to get babies on a routine, not just so I can sleep, right? But so that he has a predictable way of life. He knows that every morning at 6 o'clock he's going to wake up with a bottle, right? And every morning by 7 he's going to be dropped off at daycare, and then they have their routine and schedules. We thrive on routines, we thrive on schedules, because it tells our brains, it tells us subconsciously, it tells us physically what's going to happen next, right? And so if we're building routines that allow us to be physically active, to have moments of decompression, our brains get used to that, right? I tell students all the time, if you're ever struggling with sleep, build a sleep routine. The more that you do it, the more that your brain is going to say, okay, it's 9 o'clock, it's time for us to start getting sleepy, right? Because you have done the physical things to tell your brain and your body, this is what it looks like for us to wind down. So building a routine, I think, is one of the best ways to start mitigating stress now. So yes, AD Brews, taking advantage of the things that happen on campus regularly. At Wellness, we have an event every Wednesday from 11 to 1 called Unwind with Wellness Wednesday, where we have just an activity for you to do, experience, a workshop that will help you kind of unwind from the week and build your repertoire of self-care and stress management.
Okay. And you brought up the Wellness Center, which is super important to know about as a student, but then we also have CAPS. What does CAPS stand for, and what is the difference between the Wellness Center and CAPS?
Yeah, so CAPS stands for Counseling and Psychological Services. So CAPS is where you would go if you wanted to talk to a licensed clinical therapist. And so they are great. They have drop-in hours if you're not ready for something so formal, where you can just come into a room, have about 20 minutes with a licensed clinical therapist. There's no paperwork, there's no signing in. It's just you, a table, and the clinician. They also have more formal appointment times where you can schedule with a specific clinician. They have group settings available. I know they have grief groups, they have stress groups.
Okay.
So if you're energized more by community and being able to hear the challenges that others are going through, they have that available as well. So I think the biggest difference between the services that CAPS offers and the services that UH Wellness offers is that CAPS are licensed clinicians, right? At Wellness, we are not licensed clinicians. I can give you a Band-Aid and a hug with your permission, and that's about as good as we're gonna get, right? But CAPS can also assist you real time and kind of after things have started to go sideways. At UH Wellness, we focus more on prevention. So all of the mitigation efforts that I was talking about, how can we keep you well? How can we help you be well so that you can then do well in life, in school, with your family, your friends, occupation, right? And we also focus on skill building, and health education.
Okay.
And CAPS will focus more on not so much diagnoses, but trying to see what the root causes of some of your psychological distress or your reason for your visits are. So very individualistic approach at CAPS. At Wellness, we take a more generalist approach in prevention.
And you mentioned skill building. Can you give us a little bit more definition behind that? What? It's an example or overall?
Yeah, so kind of an example, and again, I use sleep regularly because that's what we see a lot in the fall semester, especially for folks who are in the residence hall, or they have their first time with roommates, or they're away from home and their sleep schedule is thrown off. So we build skills about how to have a sleep routine, how to set your room and bedroom environment, what a bedroom or a nighttime routine or a bed routine looks like, what that being consistent looks like, and then how to build your simple activities throughout the day that contribute to your sleep. Because a good night's sleep starts the moment you wake up, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so we talk about caffeine use, we talk about physical activity, and so we'll kind of build those skills to integrate into your daily life or your daytime life that will eventually help your sleep routine. And so we have full-time staff members who are certified health education specialists. We have a certified health coach on our health and wellness coach on our staff as well. So anything from sleep to nutrition, physical activity, substance use, stress management. The goal is to help you build those healthy habits, those healthy routines, and set goals for yourself that you can meet and that are tangible and achievable.
SMART goals.
SMART goals,
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely. Okay, thank you. Brittany, this has been so helpful. I really hope people are learning. We talked about physically. If you missed the video, if you missed the lecture on the physical body, everything is being recorded. Unfortunately, this building does not do live. we can't get the internet in here effectively, so we can't stream it live. So you'll be watching a video recording. But Dr. Elliott explained, very clearly symptoms you'll experience, things you'll be putting your body through, and you don't want to do that to yourself physically long term. So she talked about how to take care of yourself. Brittany covered a little bit of the physical aspect, but also, emotionally, mentally, and how you can travel down this road, if you will, because you have not identified what is stressing you out, what is the problem. And then she's speaking on taking care of maintaining something, putting practices in place that are going to allow you to function through the whole semester. I like how U of H really tries to get in and tries to make sure we do have things for the students. We want to do a better job communicating those things to you all so that you know what they are. And I know my grad students, y'all are definitely not going to travel to buildings to go and play with Legos. So I will bring them over here if that's what you need. So I'm your campus minister particularly, and so it's my pleasure to help you guys, physically, mentally, emotionally, and we're going to talk about in just a few more minutes spiritually. So I want to thank Brittany. If y'all give her a round of applause. Glad to have you all here. Thank you. Any last minute comment or?
I would say, just to kind of wrap everything up, is again, stress is not always a bad thing, right?
Okay.
Sometimes it can be a good thing because it can drive us to community, right? And so my advice is to always reach out early, reach out often, and reach out until something changes. This is not an isolating experience. Again, you heard the statistic, 60% of students are overwhelmed transitioning into the university academic year.
Yes.
So stress is not uncommon. So don't think that you're in it alone, don't think you're going it alone, and don't think that just know that there's people at this university who are more than happy, ecstatic and excited to help you.
Yes.
Not just UH Wellness, not just CAPS, but multiple
The
people
religion
in the
center.
department, people in departments, and faculty across this campus community. So reach out early, reach out often. Even if you reach out late, just reach out.
Just reach out. All right. Thank you so much again, Brittany. Wonderful having you. Well, welcome to our final portion of our Body, Soul, and Spirit Forum. It has been wonderful having Dr. Elliott, who addressed our body issues and the physical things that happen to us when we're dealing with stress and transition. And then we had Brittany Clark, the director at the Wellness Center at U of H, to help us talk about what is going on with us emotionally, what happens to us mentally when we're dealing with stress and transition. And no one's exempt. Faculty are experiencing different things that stress them out. Students are experiencing different things. And when I say faculty, I'm lumping administrators, deans, all of you, anyone who may be watching this video at a later time. We understand that this start of the school year is stressful. We understand that these transitions are actually taking a toll on your body. And so we're not only trying to help you manage your stress on a physical level, but also mentally, also emotionally. And now we're going to talk about it spiritually. I'm joined today with Professor Johnny Buckles from our UH Law School, and he's also represented on behalf of Mike and Teresa Baker, College Professor of Law. Professor, would you like to share a couple of things about yourself?
Hi, well, I'm just an old farm boy turned law professor. I grew up farming and ranching, public school until law school, and then went to law school and seminary and practiced law while I've been here since 2000.
Wow.
Professor since 2000.
Now, where are you from?
Originally from Northwest Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, Oklahoma. All right. And I'm also joined today with a brand new friend, brand new partner in ministry, Pastor Raul from Templo
Maranatha.
Maranatha.
It's okay.
Yes. Yes, my Spanish. I took Spanish. I was writing this out, and I took Spanish for maybe 6 years. So I love Spanish, but it's been so long since I practiced it. So, but tell us a little bit about yourself, your ministry here in Houston.
Sure. My name is Raul Manzor. I'm senior pastor at Templo Maranatha. I have a wife. I have 4 kids, all boys. We made the decision to enter ministry in 2019 as pastor. So we had moved from Houston to Bay Cliff, Texas. Does anyone know where Bay Cliff, Texas is? It's actually really close to Kemah, toward Galveston, believe it or not, where meth is way too common. There was a lot of drug addicts, a lot of alcoholics. So when we talk about transitions, I had to transition from a city life to a small town. I grew up in a Spanish-speaking church, and I started pastoring a church where now it's only English-speaking. And also, I think the biggest stressor for my family, my wife and kids was it was 2019. So 6 months of normal ministry, and then COVID hit. So pastoring during COVID was a very, very strange time. But by the grace of God, we saw the hand of God protect and guide us. We now pastor a bilingual church. We're about 15 minutes away from here in 5th Ward, Denver Harbor, I-10 and Wayside. And when I mean bilingual, I preach in English and my wife interprets in Spanish, and it's a great privilege to be with you today.
Thank you both for making time in your schedule and to talk with us today on the spiritual perspective of handling stress and transitions. So before we move into talking about how do you engage your spirit, Dr. Ashlyn gave us information on how to take care of our bodies. Brittany gave us information on how to help you mentally and emotionally. But before you can do anything with your spirit, there are 5 things, and I'm trying to keep this very simple because I don't want to turn this into a theological class. But 5 things you want to know about the spirit man as it relates to Christianity. And the first thing is everyone has a spirit. Everyone that comes into the world has a spirit. So he mentioned he has 4 kids. The babies have spirits. The second thing you want to know as it relates to your spirit man in Christianity is that that spirit is born dead or disconnected from God, or some people refer to it as dormant. So we come into the world, we have a body, we have a soul, and we have a spirit, but that spirit is not connected to God. That spirit has not resonated or in communication with God. And you may be wondering, now why would the Creator do us like that? Why would he bring us here and not have this connection with us? And that's a very good question. And the answer to that question is because, number 3, God wants you to make that choice. God wants you to make a decision to say, I'd like to get to know the Creator. I'd like to get to know this living God or this greater being, this supreme power. I want to know God. So he gives you that opportunity. He gives you that will and that ability to make that decision. Number 4 is expressed in the Bible, and it's found in the Gospels, the Gospel of John, chapter 4, verses 23 and 24 in particular. And this is Jesus having a conversation with a woman, a Samaritan woman, who is interested in a relationship with God. She wants to worship God, so she's asking Jesus questions. And he tells her the hour is coming, and now is, when true worshipers, some versions may say sincere worshipers, will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father is seeking such worshipers. So the Creator is looking for you. If you don't have a relationship with him, if you've never made that connection, he sent me, he sent Professor Buckles, he sent Pastor Raul, some others in here and on this campus to let you know he wants to talk to you. He wants to have that relationship with you. Verse 24 says, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And so that's important for you to understand. The 5th thing that's super important to know is that if you say, today after you finish listening to us, I want to get to know God. I want to start this relationship with him. I don't want you to ever think, and especially people who have been in religious settings, you may hear or think, I got to stop doing certain things before I can get to know God. I got to stop partying, or I got to stop smoking, or I got to stop doing, whatever things you may deem are negative or unpleasing to God. You don't have to do that. And you don't have to start doing anything. Oh, I need to go to church first before I can get a relationship with God. All you have to do is say a prayer. Mean that prayer in your heart. And that right there is going to be a supernatural transition that will allow you to do whatever it is God wants you to do. I don't know if you've ever been in love before, But when you love somebody, when you're in love with somebody, like whatever they ask, they can have the world. You will do anything for them. And that's what that relationship with God is like. So don't ever be discouraged and postpone because you feel like you've got to do something or start doing something. Make sure you say this prayer, mean it in your heart, and you're going to already start sensing and feeling. So I wanted to set this up before we talk about how to use your spirit to help you with stress and transition so that you can just kind of also understand not everybody is able to do this. Not everyone is able to do this. If you've had a relationship with God and you've fallen away, you feel that disconnect, this is a good time to consider coming back. But let's talk about now that you have those precursors, what stress and transition does to our body with the spirit man. And as we talked, as I put some of these things together, one of the greatest things or the greatest stories I could think about in the Bible, and if you've read scripture a little bit or you even heard the story of Jesus' life, we find Jesus in a super duper stressful situation when he's getting ready to go to the cross. He is in this garden and he is like tripping out. He's flipping out. And I'm gonna let Professor Buckley talk to us about, paint the picture for us, with Jesus, with this stress and transition in this particular passage.
So I'm going to ask you to imagine the worst form of torture that you can come to mind. I'm going to ask you to imagine the greatest darkness you've ever experienced. Be imaginative. Think wildly here. What's the worst I can imagine? And what I'm going to tell you is Jesus faced something far greater than we can even comprehend. The setting is a garden, a nice garden. Probably looked pretty like the landscaping you see when you look outside the windows. It was night. It was the eve of his crucifixion. Now he had a few friends. Some of you are sitting next to friends. He had a few friends, but they were sleepy. And they couldn't even stay awake as he was going through what he was going through on that night. He was praying to his heavenly Father. He was asking God if there was any way that God would be willing to spare him what he was about to experience, if the Father would do that. But he was careful to say, not my will, but yours, because he was willing to conform his will. What did he face? He faced a pain, a physical pain we cannot really imagine, and an even greater spiritual pain that we can really not even relate to. And I'm going to explain that as to why. Now, the physical part, I can explain that. I can explain that on the basis of history. Because what he faced, what he knew was coming, was a Roman method of execution. And it would include something called scourging, and it would include crucifixion. Scourging is much more than simply getting slashed with a bullwhip. In the Roman scourge, the Romans would attach to leather straps bits of bone, rock, maybe glass, sharp objects. They would then whip the person that was getting ready to be executed, and the objects in the whip would then claw into the flesh. And as they pulled the whip back, you know what happens. Flesh comes off. And they did it over and over again, losing track, really, because they didn't have limits like the Jewish authorities had limits on how they would whip. And then if the person survived the scourging, they often didn't, they would be led to a site of execution where their nails, their feet would be hammered to wooden cross structure. They had it figured out to where they wouldn't let the person completely hang and die a quick death without trying to breathe. So they spaced out the nails in such a way that once the criminal to be executed was on that cross, they would hang down, almost asphyxiate themselves, and then push up with their feet to take a gasp of air before they would fall back down. The cycle repeated itself over and over and over until the person eventually blacked out and died. Now, Jesus knew what this was like, and he knew what to expect. That was facing him in that garden. But there was something even worse than that, something we can't even imagine. So, I got a question for you. I want you to think of your closest relationship. Friend, a parent, a sibling, something like that. Your very closest possible person to you. Now I want you to imagine that you have had that relationship, not your whole life, but a million times your whole life, and then square that by a trillion, and you're not even close to what I'm talking about. We're talking about a relationship between God the Son, Jesus, and God the Father from eternity. A relationship of the most intimate love we can imagine that has never not been. An eternal fellowship. And guess what was coming? That eternal fellowship was about to be severed. Because the Father was preparing himself to turn his back on the Son. Why? Jesus said why. Jesus taught his disciples that he would have to give his life as a ransom for many. What's a ransom? A payment. Payment for what? Sin. Whose sin? Yours. Mine. Sin of everyone around you. This prayer is the outworking of faith. That's what Ms. Boland is talking about. She's talking about a heart condition in which you trust in the Lord Jesus Christ alone to save you from your sin on the basis of who he is, the Son of God, and what he's done. Dying on the cross, taking your sin, rising again, defeating sin and death, and offering you the life that's in himself. It's very simple, but it is also very costly. This is not something that was cheap. Think about what it cost Jesus. Not only an excruciating physical death, but a separation from the Father whom he had been in fellowship with from all eternity. That was what was his stress condition. Now, does that put your stress into some perspective? It does me.
Thank you, Professor. That is the picture that Jesus is going through. So you talk about stress and for a transition. I mean, it really is beyond what any of us are probably ever experiencing. When we talk about this now, moving a little bit forward, spiritually. So he talked about him getting beat. He talked about him being on that cross. Physically, all of that was very painful. We can only imagine, and he has some words that he shares on the cross, so we can see or analyze emotions that he may be feeling. He says, "Why have you forsaken me?" Mentally, he's trying to figure out, what is going on, or he's talking to the Father, talking to the people. But spiritually, let's take a look at his spirit now. Pastor, what would you say is happening to Jesus' spirit as he's on the cross? Is it getting worn down? Is he getting upset with the Father for making him do this? What would you say?
First and foremost, I want to say thank you, brother, for expressing that very eloquently and theologically sound in regards to what Christ went through. The spirit of Jesus was not affected, even though it's a very stressful moment. And when we read scriptures, we know that it says that Jesus he was sweating as though it was blood, because it was something that he was experiencing in a body. And right now we just went through two panels, the body, and I would say the soul, the mind, the heart, and the condition. And so in the flesh of Jesus, he was crying out in this time of stress, separation from God. You did such an amazing job explaining that. But even so, in the midst of going through these stressful moments, because he knew he had to die, he had to be separated from God. Even so, in the spirit, he gladly submitted himself into the hands of the Father, and he declared, "Not my will, God, but yours be done." And after declaring this, this is what I love about reading the Word of God or meditating on the life of Jesus, is that it's not only just a perspective of what Jesus lived. When we really look at the life of Jesus, he always gives an opportunity of discipleship. He always connects it to us, Because it's kind of hard to connect with Jesus because we know he's 100% God and we know he's 100% man, and we're in a fallen nature, we're broken, we need the Savior. But when we look at the interaction that Jesus had with Peter, I think gives us a reminder and our solution of our times of stress. Because when Jesus approached Peter, he said, you can't even stay up for 1 hour. You know, sometimes when we're in these settings around my church, I tell my congregation, I feel like, one, you're in prison because you have to pay attention to me right now. And I have really good ushers because they won't let you run away. You know, at this point, you can choose to walk away, right? But even so, you can't stay up for 1 hour, right? But even so, then Jesus declares something that I think is so beautiful. And he says, the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Now, you can take these two perspectives. You can start blaming your flesh, which most people do, and make excuses. But we need to really hold on to the promise. You know what it means also? It means that the spirit is always willing. So no matter what circumstance you go through, don't hold on to the flesh and this weakness and the excuses. Hold on to the spirit that is always willing to draw closer to the Lord. In Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15, it encourages us by saying Jesus is our high priest, but not one who does not understand our weaknesses, but that in every way Jesus was tempted. In that suffering that, again, I always talk to people about Jesus, it's like, do you think the enemy would just let him live a very simple life? No, the enemy attacked him with every form of temptation, angle that you can imagine of. But even so, Christ conquered each temptation. And so then in Hebrews it says, so let us draw near with confidence to receive our help in time. And so during our trying times of stress that we're going to go through, it doesn't matter if you believe in Jesus or you don't, you're going to go through the stresses of life. But then we, believers in Christ, know we can draw to him because he's gone through it and he's conquered. So his spirit was not affected. And we have that promise too if we choose to believe in him.
Thank you. That's absolutely right, and a great way to even demonstrate it. You know, his spirit was focused, his spirit was connected, his spirit overrode what his flesh was feeling and even what his emotions were feeling. When you are not a believer, you don't have that opportunity. You don't have the ability because there's nothing connecting you to God to keep you driving to stay in his will. Professor, after Jesus gets this spiritual conclusion, because we know this wasn't a fleshly decision. In his flesh, he was saying, Father, take this cup away from me, or take this whole, situation away from me. Let's change it up. Let's do something different. But he gives over to Jesus, God the Father, and he says, like Pastor Raul said, not my will be done, but your will be done. And what's your picture? What's your take on his disposition when he finishes this whole conversation, or this one-sided conversation, really, with God the Father?
I would say on the basis of the stories that we read in all the gospel accounts, that after that, he was singularly focused on fulfilling the plan of God to save you, to save me, and to take care of everybody around him. Now that's a weird way of saying, how on earth would he be taking care of everybody around him? Well, the first way is pretty obvious, because he knew he had to go through this ordeal in order to save the world from sin. So when he was committed to this process, he was acting in love, resolved to act in love, to take the penalty of sin, knowing with the promise of the Father that he would rise again on the third day with eternal life, which he freely gives to those who trust in him. But it's not just this big theological resolution that he reached. He also, you can see, was taking care of those around him afterwards. So even in the trials that preceded the crucifixion, where he underwent mocking, multiple beatings, ridicule, even in all of that, he pointed to God. So as Pontius Pilate, the Roman procurator in charge of ultimately sentencing him to death, when he was questioning Jesus, Jesus said, "You wouldn't have any authority if it wasn't given to you from above," pointing him to God. When Pontius said, "Are you the Son of God? Are you the King of Israel?" He said, "It's as you say." When he is hanging from the cross, we hear some words. "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do." Now, I want you to just think about that. The people that were responsible for this unimaginable execution and torture of Jesus. Jesus is praying for them. Pastor Raul mentioned Jesus as the high priest in Hebrews. The high priest makes intercession for his people on behalf of whom he's serving as priest. Even on the cross, Jesus was acting as a high priest, interceding, shedding his blood, offering his blood in a sacrifice for our sin, and interceding for sinners. Well, there's something even more personal. On that cross, he was surrounded by a couple of true criminals. One consistently mocked him. The other had a change of heart and asked Jesus to remember him in his kingdom. So I want you to think about what that implies. First, it implies that he sought the forgiveness of Jesus. Remember me. Secondly, it shows that he recognized death wouldn't be the end of Jesus. And we believe that Jesus rose from the dead, of course. Third, it shows that he recognized that Jesus is King. King of kings, Lord of lords. That was enough for Jesus to speak to this criminal also being executed and saying, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." So what was Jesus' state of mind after the garden? His state of mind was you. It was me. It was those around him. That his death would be understandable to them as having been offered for their spiritual lives.
And that's a beautiful picture and so accurate. I love how you started off with just focus. The stress was gone. The anxiety was gone. The pressure, it was gone. He was ready to do. When you read the gospel accounts, he surrenders willingly to the soldiers. There's no fighting. There's no pushback. He just goes along with the will of the Father. And so that is how in tune we can be. That no matter what we're doing, no matter what we're going through, when our spirit has connected with God and we're in his will, then no matter what that outcome is about to be or look like it's going to be, we can be at peace. And as a pastor, I gave this question to Pastor Raul because I wanted you to share with our listeners, being in the will of God can sometimes be scary. Being in the will of God can, make you be like, what, is this really God? Like, do we really have to do it this way? And so what would you say to being in God's will? What should being in God's will do for all of us when we're spiritually connected?
Yeah, transitions are scary. Entering into the unknown requires courage and tenacity. And there are many scriptures that encourage me in my walk. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9, it says that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no heart can imagine the plan that God has for those who love him. So when you're walking in the will of God, it truly does not matter what comes your way because you know that there's a purpose behind it all. And Christ on the cross knew the purpose, and even though his disciples, his mother, they had no idea, he knew exactly what was happening. I like to meditate on Matthew chapter 14. It's such a jam-packed chapter of so many stresses and transitions. Matthew 14 says that Jesus heard that his cousin was beheaded. It starts off with that. Then he walks away to be alone in a desolate place. Then while he's, again, because he's in the flesh and he still hurts, while he's alone, then people come to him and they want to be taught. And he teaches and he preaches. Then he feeds the 5,000. After feeding the 5,000, he tells his disciples, you guys go on the boat, leave me alone. Because he's still mourning, transitions. So then scripture says that he went up on a mountain. And then we get the story where he walks on water. And when he walks on water, he calls out to Peter, says, Peter, you see me? And then Peter says, all right, if you call out to me, I'll walk on the water. So he walks on the water. When did Peter start sinking? When he kept his eyes off of Jesus, when he was moved into the winds, into the waves, and he started sinking deep. So for us, when we are in the will of God, when we're following Christ, when we fix our eyes on Jesus, we have peace. Fear and doubt causes us to sink and fall, but focusing on Christ allows us to walk on the waters of life. And so Jesus says in John 14:27, peace I leave you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. And so for us, it's all about focusing on Christ. And he knows what he's doing. And even to the point where we look at such horrific moments in history, and even so, I know, God, you have a greater purpose. And I could keep on talking, but I'm gonna stop right there.
Yeah, we're a little bit over our time, so we are going to wrap up. But I did want to give Professor Buckles, a couple sentences or two. What thoughts or what recommendations would you make to your colleagues, your students listening about stress and transition as it relates to their spirit being connected to God?
What I would say, you think about it, first is entering the state of peace. How do I enter a state of peace with God? And we've said how to do that. You trust in the Lord Jesus to save you from your sin because of who he is, Son of God, became man, and what he's done. Dying on the cross, taking your place, taking the penalty for your sin, and rising again in eternal life. And that's the start. Because once you trust in Christ, God makes you new. You become born of the Spirit, and you have entered into a relationship of peace with God. A lasting peace, as Pastor Rob was saying. 5th chapter, book of Romans, Paul said, having just been justified by faith, we have peace with God. But then, in life's daily struggles, we can lose sight of that peace. And so my advice is to not become distracted by whatever it is that wars with your inner person, whose reality is peace. How do you do that? Well, there's a great passage in the Gospels. We talked about it when we were getting ready for this presentation, where Jesus uses the image of a yoke, a double yoke of an ox. Take my yoke on you and learn of me, and you'll find rest for your souls. Now, the image is, a powerful ox with a double yoke, and the ox is carrying nearly all the weight. And we then are learning how to plow the fields of life as we are guided along, carried along, and assisted by the immense strength of the one to whom we are yoked. This passage says that when we yoke ourselves to Christ, we experience that rest. No matter what kind of field we are plowing, if we are yoked to Christ, then we have someone who is carrying the great weight of our burden, the great weight of our load, the one who gives us rest.
Beautiful. Amen. Very true. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. If you're watching the video, God bless you as well. This whole project, Body, Soul, and Spirit, was something the Lord gave me almost 2 years ago. And I started off with just doing body forums, but I'm delighted this semester to bring you the holistic health mechanisms and health practices for all your body, soul, and your spirit. And we would not do right today if we did not give people who don't have a relationship with God to do that. And so if you are saying, even while we were talking, either professor or pastor were talking, you felt something in your heart, you sensed something, you are at this point where you're interested or you're ready to make this connection with God. I want to invite you to say this prayer. And if you have questions, I want you to definitely reach out. As a campus minister here at U of H full time, it is my commitment to help you holistically. I want to see you be healthy. I want to see you be emotionally stable. I want to see you be physically fit and to do well in your academics and in life. But most of all, I want to see you be spiritually alive. And I want to see you spiritually flourish. And so if you want to say that prayer, you can close your eyes and mean this from your heart. And it's simply repeating after me, saying, "Dear Lord Jesus, come into my heart. Be Lord of my life. All that I am, all that I'm not, I surrender to you. I believe that you died on the cross for my sins. And I believe that you were raised from the dead and are seated at the right hand of the Father. I invite you, Lord, to be the Lord of my heart, to lead and guide me. And I thank you for your gift of salvation. Amen." And if you said that prayer, please reach out to me. Don't just give your heart, become a convert. That's what we would call you. You've been converted. You've been born again. But we want to see you and connect you with family. We want to get you a great pastor. We want you to know about professors who can answer your questions and help you. And so any last minute comments or takeaways you guys want to share? Okay, all right. So that's going to conclude this portion. We will be holding our next Body, Soul, and Spirit Forum on October the 7th. I don't know if it'll be in this building, but stay tuned to all the notifications and invitations. Thank you again, Professor Buckles and Pastor Raul. I just want to call you doctor so bad. Thank you, gentlemen, for doing a wonderful job today. And thank you all for coming out today. God bless.
Join us on Tuesday, October the 7th at 12 p.m. in the Engineering Building for another wonderful set of panelists who are ready to help you with your body, your soul, and your spirit. I'll see you there.